Hey guys, hello and welcome back to another Minecraft Forge modding tutorial. And yeah, this is the second episode for the custom rendered block. And after we have created all the rendering stuff we need for our nice little table, we will now create all the block stuff and all the things so we can place our table in the world. So now let's get started. Now, what we're gonna have to do now is register this renderer, or first of all, we'll have to create a new block that takes in this tile entity information. So, in your blocks package, simply create a new class called block table, and this block table, and this will not extend block, but it will extend block container, which basically just says this class should have a tile entity bound to it. Now it wants a constructor from us. First of all, the block material, of course. So because it's a table, we can remove the material from the constructor and simply put in super in brackets material dot wood. I said dot on German, I'm so stupid. And now it wants some other method, which is the create new tile entity method. And now rename this world field to world and this int field to ID. And now the return, just delete this return null and put in return a new tile entity table. And as you can remember, we have just created this tile entity table class. Now, there are some other methods we need for the block. First of all, we'll have to say that the render ID of this block is not set. So we'll put in add override, because it overrides the super class public int get render type. And those nice brackets, and put in return -1. So it is not set. And if we put this on 0, it will be rendered as a normal block, and on 5 I think it will be rendered like a grass block. So if you want to create a grass block, simply put in 5, and there are loads of rendering IDs for Minecraft's render engine. So now what we'll have to do now is say that this block is not opaque, because otherwise we would be able to see all the dungeons and lava and endstone from the blocks underneath this block. So put in public boolean is opaque cube, and this should return false. And now we'll have to do one other thing, which is public boolean is normal cube. And this also returns false because it is a custom rendered cube. Oh, I wrote returns. So that's everything we have to do for this class, but we will set a name for this. So set block name and put in table. There we go. And we don't have to set a texture name, because this block will be rendered in 3D in the inventory. Now in our language files, in the angus.lang, put in tile.table.name equals table. And now we have a nice name for the block. So now what we'll have to do is simply binding the tile entity renderer to our tile entity table.class. And for this we are gonna go in the client proxy and put in client registry in the register renderer method, because we don't have to write a new method for this. Put in client registry dot bind tile entity special renderer, which is pretty self-explanatory to renderer. And now in brackets, it will take in the tile entity class, import everything, of course. So add arguments, which will both be null. So first of all, the tile entity class, which is tile entity table.class. And now the renderer, which is a new instance of our table renderer. So put a new render table. There we go. Import this. And now it should work. So now we'll have to create a class that can render any tile entity as a 3D item in the player's hand. So, just that it looks nicer. So create a new package in our rendering package and name this items. And in there create a new class called generic block item renderer. Renderer. So there we go. And this will take in 2 arguments in the constructor. But first of all, we'll have to create a field and let it implement item renderer, because it should be an item renderer. Import this, and now it wants some methods from us. So the handle render type will just return true, and also the should use render helper will return true, and the render item method, in there we will gonna put our rendering part. But first we'll have to create a new field, which is first of all a tile entity. So this field is the field which tile entity should be rendered in the hand. And the other field is just the related tile entity renderer. So, private tile entity tile and private tile entity special renderer semicolon. And now we'll have to import these classes, and now simply select those and right click on them and go onto source and generate constructor using fields. So it will automatically create such a nice looking constructor for us without we have to write it. So what we'll do now is go into the render item method, and in there we'll have to push the matrix so it knows, oh, there's a new rendering part in here. Or basically just so we can move the rendering in the world. So do gl11.gl push matrix and gl11.gl pop matrix, of course, at the end. And don't forget this gl pop matrix, because otherwise Minecraft or OpenGL will say overload and it will crash probably. So, and now we'll simply have to access the rendering of Minecraft, which is possible by doing tile entity renderer dispatcher dot instance, because we want the currently running instance, dot render tile entity at, and now we'll put in our tile and 0 0 0 and 0, because we want it to be rendered at the 0 position. So it is not translated away from the hand. So now let me explain the constructor. What this does, it simply takes in the tile entity and a renderer. So we can set our tile to the tile we put in the constructor, and our renderer to the tile entity special renderer. So now we can close this class, and in our client proxy we will have to create another method in which we will register all our item renderers. So create a new method called public void register item renderers, and in there simply put in Minecraft Forge client dot register item renderer. And now, since we have a block and now item, we will have to get the item from the block, which can be done by doing item.get item from a block, as simple as it could be. And now we'll have to put in our block, which we don't have at the moment. So go in your blocks class tutorial mod.blocks, create a new field called table, and add this to the block list. So do block list dot add table equals new block table, and this won't need any arguments in the constructor because it is always the wooden material. Import this class, so just the basic rendering method, just the basic registering method, and now we'll have to change the visibility of our constructor to public. This is everything. Now save this, and now we can access this table variable in our item.getItem from block. Now simply put in tutorial mod blocks point table. Now import this class, of course, and now it will want to have the item renderer behind the comma. So now write new generic block item renderer, and now in brackets we'll need our tile entity, which is just a new which is a new tile entity table. I was confused for a bit. Tile entity table. So you'll have to write this properly, not with an O, not with a large I. Tile entity table, and now the renderer, which is a new render table. And then the brackets, Control-Shift-O to import everything. Don't forget the semicolon at the end. And now the only thing we have to do now is calling our register item renderers method in our register renderers method. So leave a space there, and now put in register item renderers, open bracket, and then close the bracket again. And this is everything we'll have to do for the tile entity. So now let's start up Minecraft and see if it has worked. But it definitely should be. So while this is loading, I can clean up my code a little bit. So I will rename this. It's a mysterious.mods.tutorialmod.important classes to another package name, but Minecraft is finished loading in a bit, so I won't do this right now. And there we go, it has finished loading. Now go into our single player world. Yes, this won't appear because I had some testings before, and yeah, there was another block name. So now go into your creative tab, and there we go, we have our perfectly rendered table in our hand with the texture on it. And if we set it in the world, it will be rendered on the block's position and look directly like our table we have just created. So if we now go into third person, this will look like this. And by have a run in debug mode, yeah, by doing in our generic block item render, we can insert an if statement. So if tile equals tile entity table, so if we rendering a tile entity table, then it can translate or what if tile equals tile entity, oh, not equals, but instance of tile entity table dot class. No. There we go. If tile instance of tile entity table, we can now do gl11.gl translate d and put in 0x, 1y, and 0z, which will now check if this is a tile entity table and then translate it up. So as you can see, it is translated a little bit up in our hand. So if I now put this on 10, it is floating above the inventory and above the player. So now, as you can see, we have this nice tile entity in the middle of our screen, but we actually won't do this. But what you can also do is to scale this down a little bit. So do gl11.gl scale G, and now X, Y, and Z. So X, I would say 0.5. Y, I will leave Y, so simply put in 1 and then put in 0.5 in Z direction. Semicolon at the end, Control S, and now as you can see we have this horrific looking tiny table in our hand that is just as high as normal, but it is less wide. So now delete those two lines because we don't need them yet. And now what we will do is simply texturize this table.png. So let's build up a little house here so we can set a nice table in there. There we go. And there we are. Put in some wood here. So what you can do is also you can bind a Minecraft wood texture to it, but it will look just horrifically because the texture is just 16 by 16 pixels large, and our texture of the table is 128 by 64 pixels large. So this would create some transparent bits in the world. But what you can do now is you actually didn't see those things that I showed you, yeah? We will now just texturize our table. So there we go. There we have GIMP, and now simply select this tool, Control I to swap the selection, and now select this tool, and there we go, and we have a nice wooden texture on it. Now if we export this and put this here, we can now just select the resource pack once again, so Minecraft reloads the resources. And there we go, we have a wonderfully textured table in Minecraft and in our hand. So that's everything for this tutorial, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did so, then definitely leave a like on it. And in the next week, we will be going to create a custom rendered entity using the knowledge from this tutorial and the last tutorial. With also, we will animate this entity. So we will animate a walking animation and a fighting animation maybe also. So we will just have a look at this next week or in 2 weeks. So that's it for now. I hope you enjoyed it. See you next time, guys. Goodbye.